Hi, this is Vicki Robinson. I had a question from a customer about colorizing JPEG overlays. She had purchased my Artful Add-ons number 5. By the way, my Artful Add-ons are little bits and pieces of things that will help you finish off any page on any kit, using any kit. It doesn't even have to be my kit. I just put together a page border, a JPEG overlay, some elements and some brushes that are just some finishing touches and some accents for your page. And as I said, my customer had a question about how she could use these background overlays, these JPEGs. So let me show you quickly one idea I have for how to colorize them. Now, as I've said, these overlays are grayscale and they're JPEGs. That means they're not transparent. You can't see what's below them. They're not meant to act as finished backgrounds. They're meant to add some texture and dimension and interest to your background. So what I've done here to give you an idea here is I've just filled this layer with a solid color, and I've got my overlay on top, and now I'm going to change the blend mode of this overlay so that it can interact with the layer below. And strangely enough, the first blend mode I'm going to try is overlay. So come down to overlay, and you can see that now my background overlay in overlay mode is taking on the color of my very bottom layer here. Very quick, very easy way to change the color of an overlay. You can adjust the opacity of the background overlay layer if you like, and see how that impacts your overall look. You can actually even try the soft light blend mode. It doesn't have nearly as strong an impact on your page, and I tend to like overlay best. Let's try the same thing on another paper. Here is a background paper from my Age is Just a Number kit. This is background number 12. And turn on this overlay, and you see it's still in overlay mode, 100% capacity. So I've got something really interesting here. Let's see if I change this opacity a little bit. So there you have it. That's a real simple way your overlay can take on the color, any color you want, by blending it into a solid color or another background paper. That's easy and that's quick, but that's not the most interesting thing we can do. So why don't we play a second? Okay, so let's play with this overlay and see what we can make happen. As you see, I've got it here, and below it I've pulled in a background paper. This is number 7 from my Age is Just a Number kit. So I've just got that here in the background under normal setting, and on top of it we've got the overlay. Now this is a JPEG, meaning it's not transparent, so you cannot see right now what's below that layer. I'm going to change the blend mode of this background layer, overlay layer, to actually overlay. And as you can see, the lighter parts of the overlay have come through, showing some of the texture of the overlay. I'm going to bump that opacity down a little bit, just so it's not quite so stark. And actually this makes a very nice paper. It has some of that text showing through from the underlying layer, and I still see these mixed media bits, so it's nice and it's textured and it's great. But let's see if we can't colorize this a bit and give it a little bit of a pop. To do that, for this example, we're going to add a gradient overlay. And to do that, you're just going to click on the little black and white adjustment layer icon. In this version of Elements, it's at the top of the screen. Older version of Elements, I think it's towards the bottom of your layers panel, but just click on that, and we're going to say gradient. Now I should say that it's helpful sometimes if you start off with your color chips, the colors that you want to include on this paper, but it's not necessary because we can actually change them once we're in the gradient. And in case you're not familiar with gradients, a gradient is a gradual shifting of colors from one color in the spectrum to another, and depending on your gradient settings, you can do that in different ways. So we're going to come back up here. Remember, I'm selected on my overlay. layer, which is set to overlay mode, blend mode, with an opacity of about 65%. That's sort of optional, whatever you like best. And we're going to come in, click on gradient, and what you'll notice immediately is that you see an overlay, a gradient. This is telling you that it's coming a single color, your foreground color, to clear. And you can see that actually happening. And it's happening in a linear fashion, meaning it's going from solid to nothing, transparent, according to this gradient, in a linear fashion. We're going to double click on this gradient right here and get some options up here at the top. Because I want to incorporate the two colors that I've got in my color picker, I'm going to click on this gradient. And as you can see, it's filled in my entire screen with the gradient moving from my foreground color of this blue, green, teal color to the lighter green color. Now, so that we can see this just a little better, I'm going to say OK right now and accept this, but I'm going to change my blend mode on my gradient fill layer to overlay, so that you start to see the effect that this overlay, this gradient, is having on my paper. And already you can see that's made a big difference. I've taken what was basically a brown and white interesting paper by just doing this alone, by adding this two-color gradient fill. I have already changed the nature of my paper. And before we go on, we could even change the opacity of this so that color is not coming through quite so much. Let's just move this down, and that starts to reveal a little bit more of the texture in the underlying overlay. But let's play and see what else we can do. So here's one option. Just pick your two colors and choose the, remember, to get back into this now, by the way, I'm just double clicking on the a gradient fill. Come back in here. So I've just chosen this two-color overlay, two-color gradient, I'm sorry, so that you can see what it does right here. But the cool thing about gradients is that you have a lot of control over the way this gradient looks. I can adjust these sliders here, which control where the two colors are merging on my gradient. Let's see if I can move that puppy out of the way here. So if I move this top here, may not be very visible, but what it's doing on my underlying paper is it's changing the point at which these colors blend. So if I move these, you'll see ever so slightly changes in my background paper, more to the green. But the other cool thing is I can also change the colors. So these controls down here on the bottom say this color blue is going to go until this point, gradually changing into this color green. So let's say I actually wanted this to be some sort of pinky color. So when I click on this little color option comes up here, and I'm going to use my color picker slider. Let's just see what happens if we choose one of these colors in here. So now you can see that the color that I've chosen for this lower control is now filling the lower half of this gradient, and it's gradually changing to this lighter color green that I have here. Let's change this one. Click on this. That opens, gives me the option to change the color, and let's just go wild. Let's just go and choose, see what kind of color we get in here. Not seeing much change here, but I know why that is. Let's just pick this color right here. There you go. So now I've gone from, let's just say okay on this. I've gone from, gone from this plain, basically two-toned color overlay paper, which is perfectly fine, to a gradient that has actually changed the colors to give me something more vibrant. Let's go back in and play with this a little bit more. Double click on it, open up the gradient fill dialog box. Let's say I wanted to add yet another color. Well, just click up here, add another spacer in there, another change from this color to this color, and then click down here. And as you see, it's now associating another color with my two colors. I'm going to click on that to change the color. Let's see if we can do something really wild here. What can we do really wild? So this green probably illustrates this better. So now my gradient is coming from the bottom up, smoothly transitioning to this point where it starts to bring in the greens, and then transitioning where it starts to bring in the pinks. Say okay and okay. And we have a little bit more control here. We can change the opacity of this gradient so more of the gradient shows and less of the transparency below. Or we can go the opposite. We can have just a little hint of color. Leave this in the middle. What happens if we change this to soft light? Not a whole heck of a lot of difference here. Soft light, overlay, a little bit, but not much. What happens if we change the opacity of this? So as you can see, you actually have a lot of control with this gradient. Let's change this back to overlay. So we're back to sort of where we started. Make this down to maybe say 50%. But remember, we've got this in this background overlay is in overlay mode at 65%. What if we made that 6%? Well, now less of the overlay is showing and more of the gradient fill. Let's change this all the way up and say 100%. Well, now we've got these cool colors and we have a lot of the texture of the background overlay showing. So as you can see, using a gradient fill is a great way to customize, personalize, manipulate, whatever word you want to use. It's a great way to make these black and white or gray tone, grayscale overlays add texture and dimension and interest to your paper. Thanks for watching. If you like this digital scrapbooking tutorial, be sure to give me a thumbs up or a like and add any comments or questions you might have below. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any new digital scrapbooking tutorials.